Well, so there's a couple of different answers, I think.
Well, everyone has, the freedom to say whatever they feel, whatever they want.
The idea of freedom of speech in America is the idea that you can state your opinion, your beliefs, without being persecuted, arrested, detained, sued, for the most part.
I would define it as what has evolved into freedom of speech light.
Ideally, it's you have the right to your opinion.
Everybody has a different opinion. I have mine. I always tell everybody my opinion. I don't care whether they like it or not.
Free speech is what built our country, what helps to define our country, and I think will be the force that keeps our country moving forward through the millennia.
In a way, yeah, because I feel like sometimes people take things too literally or too they're too sensitive about things.
I think people who have any hate towards them take it too far, but people have to accept that people are mean and it just happens all the time.
Sometimes people may view you or form an opinion about you just based on one statement that you make. For me to say, I don't believe in gay marriage, I generally don't say that because people are going to form, oh, she's a bigot, she's a this, she's a that. When that's not true, for me it's not right. I don't believe in it, but I'm not going to do anything to harm anybody if they believe it.
To me, I just see that as there's been a lot of a specific kind of speech that's been privileged over the years, the standard white male privileged speech.
And the minute we start limiting one type of free speech, it leaves the door open to limit all free speech.
People are afraid to speak their opinion because harm could come to them.
If you're not saying something like totally nice, there's consequences to that.
And there are people who see that equality happening, both voices being heard on equal playing fields, or at least being tried to be heard on equal playing fields, as some sort of attack on their own rights. But realistically, it's just your speech is not as privileged, maybe, as it was before, which it shouldn't have been in the first place.
Boy, the way Glenn Miller played
songs that made the hit parade.
Guys like us, we had it made. Those were the days.
If you ask anyone who's seen it, they'd probably tell you that a show like All in the Family could never be made today.
I think that, if God had meant us to be together, he'd have put us together. But look what he's done. He put you over in Africa, he put the rest of us in all the white countries.
Well, you must have told him where we were, because somebody came and got it.
Although, I'd beg to differ, because the show wasn't just about satire, but speech itself. And I think speech, like everything else, changes over time. In the United States, our right to free speech is more expansive than any other developed country. There are exceptions. We can't yell fire in a crowded theater, or use fighting words. But we don't have limitations on hate speech. The argument being that we need to protect this in order to prevent this.
Nationalsozialisten sind Parteigenossen!
So to get a better perspective on one of the biggest debates going on today, I talked to a couple. A few. Several. several people to hear what they thought about free speech.
America is in trouble. What's with these college wimps who can't bear to hear a speaker and need a safe space, aka a college playpen, because they're so traumatized by words?
With so much media attention on campuses, and the idea that liberal professors are brainwashing students, I decided to talk to a professor who strays from the narrative. Professor Capobianco is a philosophy professor who shares the belief that free speech is under attack on campuses, including here at Stonehill.
When I was in college, one of the big issues, public issues, was abortion, let's say. We would have these conversations all the time, debates, very heated debates about, whether abortion was moral or not, right? Whether it was ethical or not. But never once do I recall ever someone saying, I'm offended by what you're saying. I was looking at the college website, and I see that, like other colleges and universities, we now have a report a bias incident page. And students, or faculty or staff, but students can go onto the website and they can report that they have been offended by someone's speech. Let's use an example. Imagine you were in a class during the day and you had a very stimulating discussion about illegal immigration. And you were so excited by that conversation that that night you go to you're back to your dorm, right? And you're sitting around with a group of friends and you're all engaging in a conversation about this. And this is what college life is about, those conversations that carry over from the classroom into the dormitory. That's college life, right? But now, somebody in that room, after it's all over, thinks, oh, gee, you know what Paul said? That offended me. I'm going to write out an incident report. Now, let's say that they don't have enough evidence to punish you, because there is the possibility that somebody can be punished for the speech that is reported here. Still, you go back to the dormitory. What's the likelihood that the next time you have a good conversation in class that you're going to bring it back to the dormitory? The likelihood is very, very small. When we're in college, ideas get thrown around. We may not always use the right words, or we may not always say it the right way, and the possibility we're mistaken is there. That's okay, but not if it's reported by someone as offensive, which can then lead to punishment.
In the philosophy class I took as part of my integration, we explored several different theories and arguments for and against hate speech. One argument that came up was the idea of epistemic injustice. I asked Professor Mitchell, who taught the class, to explain the idea of epistemic injustice.
So epistemic injustice is this really fascinating phenomenon where it turns out that being a member of a particular marginalized social group, take race or gender, right? So being like black or a woman or a black woman, right, can actually lead other people to discount you as a source of knowledge.
I didn't hear a word she said. I was looking at the James Brown wig.
She gets out and she starts asking me all sorts of ridiculous questions. You could see there was blood coming out of her eyes, blood coming out of her wherever.
That's a disturbing realization, right? And it's disturbing not just because of, the implications for my sort of unconscious biases that I harbor, but it's disturbing in the sense that suddenly, one of the main things that we need as interlocutors, right, as people engaged in this practice of speaking and listening, is to be taken as seriously as our statements deserve, which we don't think in actual fact affects the truth of my statement, right? Like, that's not the sort of thing where we're like, oh yeah, but women, they can't be believed, right? But even if I sincerely believe that women can be just as believable as men, right? I'm still discounting the statements of other women. And so the injustice comes in when suddenly you find yourself unfairly excluded, right, from this community of knowing, right? This community of giving and exchanging information. Because like, what does that mean for my speech? Every person of color, every woman has experienced trying to relate to, you know, a white person or trying to relate to a male, an experience of racism or an experience of sexism, and having the other person say, are you sure you're not just misreading the situation? Are you sure you're not just overreacting?
White lives matter, black lives matter, Asian lives matter, Hispanic lives matter, blue lives matter. What is so controversial about saying all lives matter?
Wealthy men are going to attract a lot of lawsuits. He's working with a lot of women. This has never happened until 3 weeks before the election. Give me a break.
I imagine that there were a lot of classes that women sat through or students of color sat through 10, 15 years ago that were really alienating and really difficult. Because I sat through classes that were really alienating and really difficult, and nobody said anything. Because who would have listened? No one would have listened.
After hearing these arguments, and so many more, I'll admit that I'm still torn about speech. I get it. It's one of our most revered and fundamental rights as Americans. But what's the point of speech if no one's going to listen? If the only way to get attention from the other side is if it's hateful? If it boils down to empathy, or just thinking twice about what we say, we might have a little work to do. Until that day, make your opinions heard. For some of us, it's all we have.
The nocturnals are awake, leaving the lonely and the longing in their wings. She is longing, searching for a fire, just so sick and tired of being tired. And oh, she's vulnerable, yet she is full of wit. Just so beautiful, boys, so watch your backs quick. Don't you dare hurt that girl, 'cause she'll leave you out in the wind and just simply on fire. So if you can't handle her heat, look me in the eye.